Hi, Hugh. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, same as always.
So you say the moon's in Aquarius tonight. What's that mean to you?
Aquarius is in my 11th house, but I'm a Cancer.
All right. Well, I don't know much about astrology, and maybe some of the other listeners don't either. Not that you believe in astrology per se or anything. Just what is that? What do they say what's the meaning of all that?
My lead
Supposedly.
guitar player was Aquarian. Him and his brother stole my trademark and my publishing company with my little brother for a time.
Okay, but what's that got to do with Aquarius? You lost me.
I started a business and I named the band Bottomline.
I
And
see.
then my two best friends and my brother stole it from me as I became a publisher in New York. Not too bright.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to share a photo. Can you see that?
So far, it says that you started sharing a screen. There we go. Yeah, now it's clear, clear and big on the screen there.
See, this is the Harry Fox Agency in New York,
Mhm.
October 16th, 1985. Huey Squire and me and my business Bottomline. I was an ASCAP BMI publisher. And this is
Right.
Sending the Clowns, writer Stephen Sondheim. And this was just used in a Joker movie. And when I signed it in 1985, it was worth $87 million. Judy Collins was singing it originally, and I was collecting royalties on it. And I'm going to stop this share.
That's the same Fox agency that became Fox News and Fox TV. That's the same
It
people.
became Fox Entertainment
Mhm.
when the internet came into being. And Fox Entertainment is owned by London. CBS is Canadian Broadcasting. CNN is run by the BBC. And a couple other news stations owned by London. And they all interfere with our elections. They're not supposed to.
That's a good point. We were talking about this the other day. I want to know how all these British news stations owned and ran and operated can come over here and talk about our elections like they do. Uh, and everybody thinks it's Americans. And somehow they get away with this because Americans are too stupid, I guess. We don't have enough sense to realize that the people we see with a thick British accent are British
Yeah,
and,
London,
operated in
London
any.
isn't supposed to interfere with American elections
Why are Americans this level stupid that we can't see that a bunch of people
because they're
talking
not
to
taught
us
anything in
with
school.
British accents are British and shouldn't be interfering and talking about our
Because they're
election?
not taught anything in school. And the majority of them just, they live to get high and have
Yeah.
sex.
Yeah, that's all we see out there. I
I,
know.
I showed that share because I own the Bottomline trademark. And it was stolen when they stole the WWF trademark. And I was murdered so many times I couldn't defend myself. And then they murdered two judges and three of my attorneys.
Yeah, it's not like you never tried to fight back in all this, which is, I think, an assumption that some people make. Well, why didn't you fight back and all this? Well, you did, but they kept killing your attorneys.
And two judges.
Yeah.
They killed one of the judges at Selfridge Air National Guard, where Cheney recalled the planes protecting New York on 9/11. And Cheney in London wrote a song about murdering my wife. And they were singing it 10 years before they murdered her, Victoria.
Um, What was that? I don't remember. You told me this one before, but I can't remember.
Werewolves of London. They
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it. Okay.
they talk about killing Vic.
Okay.
That was my wife's name.
Yeah. What?
They actually murdered her in her wheelchair. They cut her ears off in her wheelchair. They tortured her for 35 days. Two nurses sodomized her, caused her lower colon to bleed. She had to get all kinds of transfusions because of that.
Now,
And
Hugh, all that makes perfect sense. Hold
they,
on just a
they,
second because
they
I really
slit
want to
her
throw something in
throat. They slit her throat Halloween Eve.
Right. Well, hold that thought because I want to throw something in here because um yeah, I'll try to be careful how I say it, but it's hard not to. But a very famous murder movie about a serial killer in which Graham plays the main killer, which is in of itself an amazing thing.
Jason.
Uh,
Jason was my brother's.
Jason, the serial killer. He killed Victoria and Terry in the same way in the movie that they were murdered. Your wives in
My
real life,
two,
named them by names.
my two murdered wives in East Tennessee. That's correct.
Yeah,
Police
yeah.
murdered them.
And then we find out that Graham was the guy that played Jason.
Graham hid the murder of my twin on Vance Street as Osborne and Anderson murdered him with
Right.
Laurel Hall. In the last video, I said maybe it was somebody else's name, but I know it wasn't.
Well, see, it makes perfect sense that
Daryl
Lon Chaney would be, singing about this because,
Daryl Hall in Oakland County knew the Eagles. That's how he put them on his show, Joe Walsh. And the Eagles, one of their brothers was dismembering people and leaving their body parts at concerts all over the country. But they
okay,
disappeared all this news.
that sounds like a horror movie in and of
They,
itself.
they threw my twin's body in Pennsylvania, where my wife was born, Victoria Mellon. And all my wives were dismembered and murdered.
Right. So if it's that horror genre theme very, very well.
I
Dick
don't think
Cheney.
I think that went over your head, so I'll say it again. One of the Eagle band members, his brother from Vietnam, was dismembering people and leaving body parts at all the concerts. And they hid all this news. It was in the papers, and then they disappeared it all.
Now I got it because what I was going to say is Graham and Cheney, they've been publishers all the way back since the 1800s and newspapers and magazines and periodicals all the way back to back with the Edgar Allan Poe.
All the people that murdered my twin and kidnapped me, as Pratt cut my father's hands off at work. And the Twin Towers were built on Pratt Street.
Mm-hmm.
They were all Confederate soldiers. They were generals and majors in the Confederate Army. Patterson, Osborne, Hall, Long, Wallace, Anderson, they were all Confederate soldiers.
Right.
And they attacked my family on the day the Admiral Byrd was murdered. They kidnapped me and they murdered my twin on Vance Street. So you
Yeah.
got Osborne, Trump's election committee, and his vice president Vance murdering my twin. And then in 1963, when they killed Kennedy, Stone was pretending he was a surgeon and he cut the bone out of my foot as torture as they murdered John F. Kennedy. And Stone is Trump's election committee. So you got Osborne and Stone, Trump's election committee, and his vice president Vance, where they murdered my twin and tortured me in this presidential election.
Right.
I don't believe Kamala Harris is any better because she knew L. Brooks Patterson, who was in the driveway when the five governors murdered my twin.
Right.
And he never reported the murder. And Graham Media ran the media in Oakland County. And Barr and Graham And O'Brien never reported my kidnap or torture or the murder of my twin, as my father's hands were cut off in 1957. So this tells me that they planned 9/11.
Yes, obviously.
It's on the back of my baby pictures. George Towers took the pictures. And the street address is Kennedy's murder date, 1963. And the
Right.
pictures were taken on 9/11, 1953. So they planned Kennedy's murder and destroying the Twin Towers on the day I was born.
Yeah.
And I'm related to presidents on the U.S. money. All of this was planned.
I do get pretty tired of seeing these people in Facebook, you know, especially like on some of the wrestlers' pages and stuff where you're telling people who the WWF really is. And they'll write
The
something stupid
trademark
and
thing.
disparaging. Yeah.
They stole the WWF trademark. DuPont McMahon did that
Yes.
in Austin and Hogan. They stole 2 trademarks. Everybody knows about the WWF, but the kids nowadays don't know. They laugh at me when I post this, and it's true. And then they laugh at my 4 murdered wives. My whole family was murdered 5 times. They stole patents, trademarks, federal licenses from me, used my name in every country on earth, as they stole my trademark Bottomline. And I
Right.
hired Weiner and Associates to protect it. And they went to New York and they gave it to everybody to use.
I know. Now that's why you see on the WWF, you see Trump with McMahon and, you know, cutting his hair off. This is why you can see the ones that stole the trademark Bottomline.
Well, Trump
Uh
says he's greater than George
oh
Washington. Trump says he's greater than George Washington because he knows his election team murdered my twin.
yeah, but look how they plan. Hold
And he
one
was
thought at a
4
time
years
though.
old. He was 4 years old.
Yeah, yeah. Hugh, hold on though. Hold one thing at a time because it gets confusing if I don't get the whole sentence out. But the think about how, you know, Vince McMahon and Donald Trump, okay, were fighting each other, you know, in their WWE series, the same place that stole the WWF trademark and stole your trademark, and then how they plan all this stuff in advance. Like the 1989 when Hulk Hogan's saying, "And the Twin Towers shall come crumbling down," you know, in a tag team match, right?
They already
And
planned all this.
yeah, well, and you see more. You saw a wrestler called Kamala Harris. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, they know everything that's going to happen before they do it because they're the ones planning it, making it happen.
Right. And it's just unbelievable. And then when I post the truth, and I'm George Washington's family and President Jackson's family and the Chase family, I'm related to all the presidents on U.S. money. I grew up with Lincoln and Grant and Hamilton, went to school with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody laughs at me and thinks I'm lying, and I'm saying truth. And they laugh at my murdered kids. I've had 24 kids murdered. They laugh at it. And they laugh at my 4 murdered wives, and my wives were all dismembered and murdered on holidays, and you know this. I have
Yeah,
both the murder cases, right?
right,
And then my mother's whole family was murdered at church, and her family built Hollywood.
right. And this is why they kind of center the
And,
whole
and, and then they laugh at me when I say truth.
yeah.
And it's just unbelievable how stupid Americans have become.
Yeah, yeah, but we know that they've been doing this since the 1850s, building this
When they kill Grant,
macabre Edgar Allen Poe, Chris Christie, and Agatha Christie, all connected here, and
all my
you're
family members.
yeah, and now Jason and that movie and so forth, all coming together, all reflecting your life and how
By
that
the
they've been
very
silly.
media that had my twins murder
Hmm.
on Vance Street, Trump's vice president.
Yeah, you were related to Edgar Allan Poe's literary critic. I mean, that's how far this goes back. It's unbelievable.
And you know, I live with Lakota Indians right now, and they own Mount Rushmore, and I'm related to the presidents on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And they all laugh at me. They laugh about 2 dozen murdered kids. They laugh about 4 murdered women. And my mother's whole family being murdered at church on Christmas Day. And that was the Fuller family and the Gardner family. Ava
Yeah.
Gardner married Sinatra. And these are my family members. And they actually laugh at me when I'm saying truth.
Right. Right.
It blows my mind how stupid Americans have become.
It blows my mind that I mean, sure, just the ignorance level has become unfathomable, but what's even worse is the lack of desire to know or try to understand reality. That's what really bothers me.
They don't even try.
None, zero effort.
Maybe 1 out of 1,000, one out
Oh
of
gosh,
10,000.
100,000. Let's be real. You have 20,000 people on your block list on Facebook. I mean, because people are just that ignorant.
They laugh about murdered women, dismembered murdered women on holiday. They were
Yeah,
murdered on July 4th,
I
on
mean,
Christmas Day, on Halloween.
what kind of people have we become to do that? To laugh at murders and dismemberments.
From what I can see, all they care about is getting high.
That's it. That's it.
Everywhere they want to legalize marijuana, they live for the weekend so they go out and get high and drunk
Uh-huh.
and look for sex.
Yeah.
They don't care. They no longer have any character to care about murdered kids and women.
Right, right. At the Democratic National Convention today, they have a portable abortion bus or whatever you want to call it, going around offering free abortions in front of the uh, Democratic National Convention. I mean, how awful have we become and demoralized as a country to think that that's
Most of the abortions are done by hookers and prostitutes.
yeah,
So they want to legalize hookers and prostitutes, like
right,
it's illegal in Nevada.
yeah, right,
And they've
some
already
places.
legalized drugs all over the country.
Hmm.
Where I live here on the West Coast, they want to legalize LSD and hallucinatory mushrooms if they haven't already.
Hmm.
Um, and myself, I don't drink or get high, and you know that. You've known me a long time.
Yeah,
I don't,
yep,
I don't know how to get through to American people that their country has been stolen. British news is Fox, CNN, CBS, NBC, and they're interfering with our elections, giving the American people propaganda. And
yeah.
we became a country because we threw England out of this country. So they're letting the very enemy they threw out of the country control their election. Makes no sense to me. And you know yourself that Anderson, Hoover's boyfriend, kidnapped and tortured me, murdered my twin. As I lived on Hoover Street, and Hoover funded my school system, and Webster funded my school system, and Webster put my stolen trademark in his dictionary as it was stolen. So now everybody all over the globe uses my stolen trademark, which was worth $3 trillion at ASCAP and BMI. And on top of that, they stole all of my mother's patents for the geodesic dome, vans, milk trucks, the Fuller transmission and semis, buses, when they murdered her family. and nobody cares about any of this. Um,
And it's
the whole
unfathomable how anybody
problem, I
can't care.
think, the whole problem, what I see is corporate America took over the country. And they don't care whose trademark or patents or what Americans they kill.
Yeah.
They murdered George Washington's family and nobody cares. I'm also President Jackson is my great grandfather. My family was with Lincoln as Bruce shot him, and nobody cares that they murdered my family completely 5 times on 5 holidays, and not a single person cares other than you and Amy and Judy Adams. It just amazes me how naive they've all become. This is their country, and the founders of the country are being murdered, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
And then
Not
they laugh about the murders.
there's not a patriotic spark in them that
I've
says they
had
got to
kids,
stand up and defend their
Greg, I've
country.
had kids 4 years old, dismembered, raped, and murdered, thrown on my properties, and nobody cares. They laugh about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's disgusting how America's become. And I blame corporate America for this. In the very Eisenhower told you about corporations taking over America.
Yeah.
Murdered Admiral Byrd. And Admiral Byrd is my family member.
He was a big, huge part of it. We've
And
discovered.
they were stalking me my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know this.
Yeah. Yeah. Even his daughter, you had to run in with her one time. That's unbelievable. Eisenhower's daughter.
Yeah. And
Wow.
Admiral Byrd, he confronted them about selling World War II guns for drugs, just like Noriega was doing with the entire Republican Senate. In my lifetime, in your lifetime. Same thing. And then what did the Pope do? The Pope gave Noriega sanctuary. See, that was nice of him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Didn't work
because
too
he
long, but
likes
he did.
Hitler.
Yeah.
That's because he likes Hitler and he's a communist.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Um, I don't know how to get through to American people. I tell truth. You know I've told truth. You've seen all the documents.
Mm-hmm.
I even have the documents of my wife's being raped in the hospital.
I don't know how to get people to have that spark of patriotic fervor that says everything has to be right. It's not just defend the country with a gun and go out and be part of a military. No, because what if your military is attacking the wrong people for the wrong reasons? It's
They
you have to
always,
have, and they always
they've
are, right?
been doing that for the last 3 or 4 wars.
Yeah, that's my point. So people that think they're patriotic are only patriotic because they think they're carrying a gun, but they're doing it for all the wrong reasons because they don't care enough to go down to the very foundation and understand what the country
They
is.
won't admit I exist. My name is Hugh. I lived on Hoover Street. You have the Hoover Dam. Bush blamed sad dam Hugh saying, and it was a lie. And he even said my name in a Freudian slip as the first plane hit the first tower. And they blew up my civil rights case against the family that built the Pentagon on 9/11.
Yeah.
And my baby pictures say 1963 for an address. And they were taken on 9/11, 1953 by Mr. Towers.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on YouTube right here on my phone and play that little clip, and they'll be able to hear it on my thing. Okay, so I'm gonna play that little clip because it's only 30 seconds, so that people don't think you're making this up, so they can hear George Bush saying your name on 9/11. Because I mean, it might be on our We have it separately. If you want to
Well,
watch the whole
I
video,
can share the whole video here.
can you? Can you do that?
Yeah, let me set it up.
Because I'm almost to it down here. It's kind of far down my list here on YouTube.
Talk about,
Anybody can scroll down here on this playlist of ours.
I'll share it. I'll share
Yeah,
it. Everybody can hear it.
yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And my Uncle Mills was filming them. My girlfriend put them in the classroom. And I knew the Voss family he blamed for training the Muslims.
I have it on here, but if you can show it to them, that's even
Yeah,
better.
I can show the video to people.
Okay.
I'm setting it up now. Just talk about something yourself.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier, about how this goes back. Well, Bush's vice president Cheney. We were talking about Lon Chaney and killing Victoria and Vic or whatever in Werewolves of London, right? And that goes back where Graham was a publisher. It still is, runs the Graham Media and so on in Detroit, with Trump's friends Barr and Osborne and so forth. That runs his campaign and was his attorney general. All those work for Graham. This goes back. Cheney was with I don't remember which one. One of the big, huge newspapers in New York back in the late
All of
1800s.
them, including L. Brooks Patterson, were Confederate generals or majors. And an Air Force major married me to Victoria just before 9/11, and they murdered my judge who gave me custody of my kids at Selfridge Air National Guard when they recalled the planes.
Yeah, on 9/11, right before the planes hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and all
So,
of and I live next door to McVeigh and Nichols. And when I moved to the West Coast, California, Nichols and Chapman were married, and Chapman murdered John Lennon at the Dakota. And I live with the Lakota Indians who own Mount Rushmore land in Dakota.
yeah, yeah.
And all of this is interrelated. And then I was at Robin Williams' house when he was murdered.
Well,
Hey,
did you find George Bush's video there?
yeah, I can share it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll start a share here. Can you see it?
There it is. Yep.
All right, here goes.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Los Angeles, California, in 1888. What was then called the Fed. And now we are told that there's a fire there, and that building may collapse, as well as pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing. It filled us with disbelief. Metaphor time.
There he is saying my name.
Hughes Structures. Then he corrected himself and said huge structures.
Yeah, he had a
Yeah.
Freudian slip.
Los Angeles, California, in 1888.
And he knew full well.
And now we are told that there's a fire there, and that building may collapse, as well as pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing.
He says my own name.
It filled us with disbelief. Metaphor time.
I mean, this is the guy whose grandfather was taking pictures with Hitler,
Did
and
the
they were
sheriff
making
stop?
parachutes.
Did
for
the
Hitler.
sheriff stop?
The share stopped. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and Mills is my uncle. And
Yeah.
he was filming Bush. My girlfriend put him in the kindergarten class. And
Yes.
blamed the Voss family for training Muslims who were actually Christians.
Your friends, right?
Yeah.
And speaking
I
of
knew the Voss
Mills,
family from flying in their Piper Cubs over the Gulf. And they didn't know how to fly a 747. So everything Bush said on 9/11 was a lie.
right? And
Everything.
that same Mills, Hugh, that same Doug Mills was just at that assassination attempt with Trump, right? And oh, miracle of miracles, he caught the bullet, right? In midair in one of the
And
photographs.
remember, they
Yeah,
cut my
sure he
wife's
did.
remember they cut my wife's ears off and she was born in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they took her ears. I had to bury her minus her ears.
Hmm.
And then they, without asking me for permission, they cremated her body. And I had graves in Michigan to bury her in.
Yeah.
4 hours
Very, very
after
illegal.
4 hours after they slit her throat on Halloween, they cremated her. They didn't want anybody to know her ears were missing
Right.
or that she had been sodomized by nurses. And they were gay nurses. They gave her gay nurses.
Hmm.
And these were gays that murdered my twin in Oakland County, Michigan. And those are the real Oakland County child killers, gay governor families.
Yes. Like
And they were
Osborne.
all Confederate soldiers.
Yeah.
Even Al
Confederates.
Brooks Patterson was a Confederate soldier. And
Okay.
people don't know the history of their own country.
Descendant of a Confederate soldier. Yeah.
So they never stopped fighting that Confederate war. And
Right.
they murdered my wives in East Tennessee on a Civil War ranch.
Yeah.
Where
That
Bush, where
that they
Bush,
directed you to live in,
where,
nonetheless.
yeah, and where Bush made Hitler's parachutes and uniforms and sold them cyanide.
In the same town where Hitler's limo is, same
In
town.
Greene County, Tennessee. Yeah. And they murdered all these women. No news. And then they used Cook and Perry to cover it up.
Right. See,
Isn't
this is
that
how the
interesting? Isn't that interesting how they used Johnny Cook and what was her name? Cat Perry or Kate Perry
Mhm,
to cover up my wife's murders
mhm.
with the National Guard, just like they did in Ohio, Greg. 4 dead in Ohio with the National Guard. Remember the National Guard shot?
Yeah.
And then they had my twin's murder with 4 dead in Ohio.
Okay.
And they used the National Guard then also. And my friend, I got the Manning Ranch from Armstrong, who was on the moon, and my uncle put him there on the moon. He was running the National Guard in the volunteer state, Armstrong. As they murdered my wife on a ranch I took over after he left it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was a Civil War ranch. And Manning owned it. My alumni was Garrison. My friend Russell appointed them both to run the Warren Commission, and it's all lies. Everybody in the Warren Commission was either one of my priests or somebody from my town in Oakland County, Michigan. There's
Also,
no lie in it. There's no
Hugh,
lie in this.
Hugh, it makes a lot of sense to me that the old racist Southerners would adopt an agenda that
They're
it
still fighting.
coincides with Nazis. You know what I mean?
They're
That sort of
still fighting
mentality
the
goes
Civil
together.
War. They're still fighting the Civil War.
But think about how the racism of the Nazis it does kind of parallel with the racism of the South. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Hitler even took some of those ideas from
The Indians meet,
America.
the Indians meet in West Berlin too every year. The Indian movement. They hate white people.
The Apaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know this because my wife was the secretary to the man that runs the Indian program. She was an Apache Indian.
Yeah.
Her father murdered Jimmy Hoffa, James Riddle Hoffa.
Yep. Yep.
And where I live here, Margaret Riddle is buried in the state park here.
I know. And somebody kind of sets you up to live where you're at now too, which
Right,
is just
right.
blows my mind.
When I moved into this house, Garrett, who murdered my attorney and destroyed my income in Obama's White House, and another guy who raped me and raped one of the Lakota Indians in California, their names are in my mailbox on the day I moved in here.
Yeah.
So
Garrett and White was it?
Once again, the FBI led me here to the home
Yeah.
I'm in now.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable. And then Osborne runs the sex crime division at the FBI, the very family that murdered my twin.
So every time you go anywhere, they follow you around the country so they can try to set you up again or do
There's no
whatever.
place
That's
I can go in the world.
yeah,
And you know yourself, I put the WWF murdered me 3 times as they stole my trademark. But you know yourself, I've been murdered a dozen times.
yeah.
I was on 2 planes that crashed and I lived through it.
Well, I
They
know you were.
they poisoned me with cyanide at an airport.
Yeah, that was before you got on the plane, but everybody that did
George
get on the
Bush
plane,
mixed the cyanide
right.
for the
Yeah,
US Mint.
yeah,
And then that's when he blamed bin Laden. And bin Laden's whole family was at his house in Florida, and he flew them all back to the Middle East on 9/11, the day after 9/11. That's called treason.
right.
He blamed bin Laden for doing it, and then he flew
Yeah,
even
immediately. I
bin
remember
Laden's
that
mother
happening.
back to the Middle East.
I remember that.
That's called treason.
And he just gets away with it because nobody cares or
And
says or
then,
does anything.
London News covers all of America's elections. Walter's phone was used to murder my wife when her ears were cut off. They used her advocate's phone, Mrs. Walter's phone, to call me and scream at me as they cut her ears off 100 miles away.
Right.
Garrett, they put him on the takeout after he murdered my attorney and destroyed my only income, so I couldn't hire another attorney. And he did that from Obama's White House offices. They put him on, CBS put him on the takeout. That's Canadian Broadcasting System. London attacked the founder's family, steal the patent, give the tax money to Germans. And they've been doing this for over 7,500 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Americans laugh at me, and my entire family's been murdered, dismembered and murdered 5 times on holidays. And you studied the document. You know this is true.
Yeah. Oh,
What am I supposed to do about America? My family made America, made Hollywood. Gardner and Fuller made Hollywood. Those are my grandparents. And everybody laughs at me, and my family made the USA and made Hollywood. And you know, to this day, I can turn on any TV station, and all the people in the movies murdered my twin or tortured me. And you know this.
yeah.
And people laugh at me.
Yeah.
Ava Gardner is my family. She married Rooney and Sinatra after they made Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Under the Hollywood sign, there's Gardner and Fuller Streets. They murdered Gardner and Fuller on Clinton Road.
Yeah.
And you know this.
Yeah. Showing who they're planning who's going to be president way in advance. Right.
And all of America laughs at me when I talk about murdered kids. They murdered 5 Duncan kids who lived next door to my family. And Johnson called my home as he took office when Kennedy was murdered.
Yeah. President Johnson called your house.
And he was
The day
dating
that-
Madeline Duncan Brown. And the Brown family raised my mother after they murdered her whole family at church on Christmas Day.
Madeline Duncan Brown. The president was dating Madeline Duncan Brown. He called your house because the Brown kids, or the Duncan kids rather, had eaten poison, and died. Supposedly, that was
And
the
that was
BS.
1963. We had
Yeah,
no internet. There were no games online, and everybody had a Duncan yo-yo.
yeah,
That was the only thing to do
yeah.
after school was play with your yo-yo.
Right. Yeah, when you didn't have a
And
phone,
then you
right?
get Sylvester Stallone from Ukraine, where Clinton's selling stolen uranium. On the day you got Hoffa murdered, you get Dustin Hoffman from
Right.
Ukraine.
Right.
The guy who runs the union in Hollywood, I forget his name, Ed Asner
Asner, yeah,
from Ukraine.
from Ukraine.
And all this came from the Clintons selling stolen uranium off of my family's property. It was enriched uranium stolen off of Gardner Street. And I'm
Which
the
is why, right, which is why you have Cher reflecting Cher Noble, that's in Ukraine, with the Clintons selling uranium. They plan all this so well.
the detective in my wife's murder was pulled off my wife's case and her body was dismembered and raped. And the sheriff told me it's not his fault the federal government is corrupt. And he never filed murder charges. The next sheriff in the other town where she was murdered a second time told me he's just going to leave the murder up to God, a black man. And then you got BLM from Black Lives Matter. In the Cox family, you had BLM, land management. And it turns out that all these black people took the donations and ran off with it.
Uh-huh.
So that once again, they used me to make millions of dollars and they ran off with the money.
Yeah, yeah. BLM is also Bottomline Music, the trademark that you stole. So that they
That the
stole from you.
WWF stole from me.
Right. So go back to those names again, like that. How they're using the names to reflect what they're really doing.
The detective in my wife's murder was Holt, and Holt is Cher's mother's family.
And right there, that was the sheriff with Jason in the movie too.
Yeah, 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 and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah,
They destroyed my entire life, stolen all my money, patents, trademarks, federal licenses, even my IRS licenses in every country on earth. And then I don't exist.
right.
I'm related to all the presidents on US money.
Right. See, and this is what your
And
government does.
Americans
As
laugh
they
at me when I say the truth.
I want to dwell on those name things that they do to reflect what they're really doing. I mean, some of them are so obvious that I don't understand how people haven't got it. Like you got, Osama bin Laden Hussein, and we end up with Barack Obama Hussein Obama. I mean, how freaking obvious is that? You have Peter Buttgig from South Bend,
How
who
did
just
Obama,
happens to be the first gay, trying to run for president, open gay.
how do you get Obama from Kenya, a little black kid? How did he get $1 million to go to Harvard and become an entertainment lawyer and steal my entertainment publishing company?
Yeah, somebody was helping him.
Michelle. And then Joan Rivers said Michelle was a gay and they murdered her.
Right.
And that was
Later, she's
Johnny
dead.
Rivers. That was Johnny Rivers' family, wasn't it?
I don't have any idea. I don't know who that
The
is.
singer.
Okay, I don't know him. Huh.
I was his
But
publisher too.
okay.
I was all the entertainers' publisher, and I collected royalties and distributed them.
Yeah.
They stole my federal license
Right.
from a federal court. They stole my name. They gave the world Huey Lewis from France. They gave Billy Squire from Germany. Freddie Mercury's friend, another gay like Osborne. And then Osborne's wife, Sharon Collins, her real name is Arden. And my high school was on Arden Street, and the FBI funded it.
Right.
Webster funded my high school on Arden Street. And my church was on Arden Street. So I went to church in high school and junior high and elementary school. And they were all on Osborne, who murdered my twin. And my first girlfriend was Sharon Collins. She took my first girlfriend's name, and her real name is Arden.
And there's an Osborne High School right down the road from there too, not very
Right.
far.
Right.
And then you grew up on Hoover, between Hoover and Vance Street, where you were attacked there by Osborne. And here
Right.
you have Vance running for vice president.
Right. Right.
It's unbelievable how obvious this is and what they've done and how they hide it and how they string it all together to weave a matrix, if you will, or
And Trump borrowed all this
narrative.
money from my family's bank and never paid any money back.
They take the real names, change them a little bit, put them into their own narrative, and create a story for everybody to believe it. Everybody believes it.
It's all propaganda. And
Propaganda.
all of America is believing this propaganda.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Then when you take them back and show the reality, they can't
I'm
even
the
see
real
reality.
founder's family.
They cannot see the reality at all.
They laugh at me when my kids and wives are murdered.
Right.
Mother's whole family was murdered at church. 9 people murdered at church on Christmas Day. And they laugh at that. They think I'm lying. My family owned the patents on the geodesic dome, the buses, the vans, the milk trucks, the Fuller transmission and semi. And that was a theft they did to my mother. In my lifetime, they stole the federal license and a trademark, Bottomline. And it wasn't one president. It was all of them. Since they killed Kennedy, it was all of them.
Well, and Eisenhower
And
was
the
part of it.
FBI helped them do it. And then, Rusty Hawthorne murdered my brother-in-law, Brian Baldwin. Then he changed his name to Rusty Killen, called me on the phone, said he was going to kill me next, shoot me in the back of the head. He killed a cat, threw it in my driveway, and smeared the blood all over my house. I went to the police, and 5 police stations wouldn't take a report. 5 police stations on the West Coast there. And then Hall, who also murdered my twin, Daryl Hall, his family handed Alec Baldwin, my family, a loaded gun, and he shot his own director on the set of Rust.
Right.
As Rusty Hawthorne murdered my brother-in-law, Brian Baldwin, who ran nuclear subs for 18 years.
People really need to rewind that 10 times and listen to that. Write it down if you can't follow it, because I mean, that is so profound.
Well,
I mean,
Alec
America really needs
Baldwin
to
got
see
his job because Bill Gates is my family. His mother was Baker. And
I do.
Marilyn Monroe was Norma Jean Baker, my family. I'm the Baker family. Judith Ari Baker married into my family.
Same Bakers that are in the White House today, the same Bakers that have been investigators that investigated Lincoln's assassination, Lafayette Baker. I mean,
that's my
goes that
family.
far.
That's
It's
my
all the same
family.
Bakers. They've been in the White House for
There
150
was no
years.
FBI then.
White House.
There was no FBI then.
Right, before it was called the FBI. They were investigating the assassination
murder
of
of
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
Yeah.
And all of these things in my life, and people laugh at me when my family members are dismembered, raped, and murdered. And they're thrown. They murdered my friend Oscar Tyler Moore. Mary Tyler Moore. They murdered his girlfriend. They were going to be married at Graceland. Threw her body in a dumpster as they murdered 2 of my wives. You got this picture? My family wrote the songs Elvis sang in his movies and in Vegas.
Yeah.
Mitch Ryder, my family. And they laugh at me. My last murdered wife, her father was mayor of East Detroit. That's where you get Ted Nugent, Alice Cooper, the B-52s, the Ramones. You get all the rock stars.
All people, but most of them you knew personally, or some of them. Yeah.
Ted Nugent's mother took me out to the MC5 wedding, and she was so high and drunk she couldn't walk. And this is true. And then when I stopped Noriega's gun and drug trade being run by the CIA and the Senate illegally, they put me in jail for a year, kidnapped my 7-year-old daughter with a Kennedy girl, and raped her. And Cooper did that. Anderson murdered my twin, Hoover's boyfriend. You have CNN run by the BBC, Anderson Cooper 360. And this is not coincidence.
No, that's them putting the names together to
People
weave that
laugh at my
propaganda narrative. Yeah.
People laugh at my murdered family members.
Yeah.
They don't even know that Timmy King was President Ford's kid. His real name was King and Gardner. He used the Ford name because my family ran Henry Ford's mansion. We can end this here, Greg.
Yeah, well, we said a lot there, so this turned out to be a pretty good video. I think we got a lot of real.
You know, nobody even listens to them.
Somebody that's listening to this
It'll be
needs to take
100
the
years
time.
down the road, and all these videos will be history. And the people living in this country now, they're too naive to listen.
Right. If there's one of you that have enough sense out there to listen,
trademark
take
thieves,
it and share it. Share the videos.
Trademark thieves are their heroes.
Right.
And you know this. And they laugh at murders.
They'll have to stop idolizing the WWF superstars and start caring about their own country.
When I escaped Osborne after they murdered my twin, and we were kidnapped with Camille Sirhan in 1957. This is 11 years before Kennedy was supposedly murdered by Sirhan, and this is a big lie too.
Yeah.
And it all comes from London News. It's all propaganda.
Right. And us writing letters to them is why
was brought to me from California with the Sirhan family.
This is why JFK Jr. is running for president right now, to help Trump to cover all this, because we were writing letters to him. I get it completely about what you just said.
Yeah, and he didn't even reply, did he?
He didn't even reply. But he's real nervous about it, apparently.
Well, Q was made by an FBI director, Kelly, to hide me.
Yeah.
And he's a member of Q. He thinks QAnon is the truth. And QAnon was created to hide me. You know yourself, I own the Qbert games.
By a guy whose family is FBI.
and then Q on Star Trek. Harv Bennett was my mother's best friend. He made the Star Trek movies. I'm Hugh of Borg.
Hugh of Borg.
My family owned Borg Warner. I went to Warner.
There they are, taking the name and weaving it in. Right.
I went to Warner Brothers School with Dr. Paul Warner. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And everybody laughs at me as they threw dismembered, murdered, raped kids on my family's properties. And they laugh at me. It's unbelievable how naive Americans are.
Americans, get a clue, share the videos.
Tell
the truth to people. Bye, Hugh.